with our Money Matters series, it's really about connecting you with folks and experts in the community to talk about important topics. We do this partnership not with just United Way Suncoast, but also with our partner in the community, the USF College of Education Gus A. Stavros Center. My co-host isn't able to join us today, but we have a lot of great conversation ahead with our amazing panel on a topic that I think is going to be very important for a lot of folks in the community, especially here in the Florida region, and that's saving money during the summer months with utilities, energy, all that kind of fun stuff. I don't know about you, but it's always something that's top of mind for me when we start kicking on that AC. How do we budget that money? What kind of resources in the community are available for folks, so that way we can help with that energy savings and tons more. And so we have a great panel today of experts in the field to talk about energy savings, utility efficiency, community programs, and more. We are joined by Carl Camis Rosado. He is an energy efficiency and carbon analyst at the City of Tampa. We're joined by Devin Beatty. He is an energy program specialist at Sarasota County in the IFAS Extension and Sustainability Office. And then we're also joined by Heather Santana, an energy education program manager at TECO. Thank you all three so much for joining today to talk about this really important topic. And now I'd like to hand the mic off to all three of you for some brief introductions about who you are and the work you do.
Absolutely. Hi, my name is Carl Camis Rosado. I'm the energy efficiency and carbon analyst here at the City of Tampa. My main goal is to help the city departments reduce their energy use through efficiency programs and renewable energy projects. So I'm also assisting in various projects, including the sale of renewable energy certificates that we generate from our renewable energy sources, assisting our grants department with federal grant applications that qualify for our department, and putting my expertise to the test by helping various departments improve their projects across the city, including feasibility studies, solar PV or photovoltaic installations, as well as electric vehicle charging stations. As part of my role here, I also review close to about 1,800 utility accounts, which is quite a lot. I believe it's around 500 buildings. And, through that review process, I can come up with a priority list to improve our facilities, to look at overall equipment, end of life cycle, and provide recommendations for equipment replacements.
Well, thank you so much for joining us, Carl.
Thank you.
Hi, I can go next. So my name is Devin
Sure.
Beatty. I am the energy program specialist with Sarasota County. So Matthew also introduced me as a part of the UF IFAS Extension Office. So just as a little brief overview, the extension offices are in every county in the state of Florida. They're run through the University of Florida, and they just basically use state, university, and federal resources to address local community needs. So here in Sarasota County, where I'm from, we're working on sustainability as one of our focus areas. And as such, I'm the energy program specialist. So I try to do everything I can to help our residents save on their energy and water bills, whether that's through consultations, showing up at community events with energy efficiency devices, or just teaching workshops to those organizations that could really use that beneficial assistance.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Devin, for joining us. And last but certainly not least, we have Heather.
Hi, I'm Heather Santana, and I'm with Tampa Electric Company, known as TECO. My role is to provide energy education, many different events within the community. In addition, I'm also the neighborhood weatherization program manager, and we'll kind of get into that a little bit more as we move along. I also have a solar platform that is educational, along with electric vehicles in high schools for driver's education. I have been with Tampa Electric for 31 years and have spent the majority of my career in conservation, helping people with no cost, low cost improvements, behavior changes in order to decrease the cost of their electric bill and become more comfortable within their home.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, Heather, for joining us. As y'all can, hear from these great panelists, they represent different expertises and perspectives across the spectrum on energy savings and utilities efficiency. So I think we're in store for a really awesome conversation today. And in preparation for that, we've come up with some questions beforehand for the panelists to answer, but it might not cover everything that you're interested in listening to as the audience. And so if you have a question that's burning in your mind, and you would like to have an opportunity for the panel to address your question, if you are on using those webinar right now, you're able to access the Q&A feature. Please use that if you have any questions. And if we have some time today to get to it, we'd more than love to share your question with the audience. And hopefully, if you have a great time, or even if you don't have a great time, please use the satisfaction survey that you're going to be asked at the end of the webinar today to share more about your feedback. Our goal is always to make sure Money Matters is a program that you're finding a lot of enjoyment and knowledge in. And so please use that survey to share your feedback and your thoughts, so we can continue improving for the upcoming Money Matters webinars we have ahead. And so we'll jump right into it now, now that our panel has introduced themselves. And we'll start with a topic that is really probably going to be a common thread between all of the questions that are asked today. And that's on the topic of, of reducing, energy use and costs. That's something that folks are always looking for, especially as they're, if they work paycheck to paycheck, or they're looking at, how do they minimize their fees so they can maximize their budget savings elsewhere. Can folks on the panel share some tips that they would recommend for reducing energy use or, utility costs in a household?
I'll be happy to go first. One of the first things you would like to start with is either an online energy audit to identify behaviors that you have in the home and how the equipment in your home works and contributes to your electric bill. And or we provide a free home energy audit. You do not need to own the home. All it really costs you is your time, and that allows us to come in the home as a residential energy auditor and talk with you and get information in reference to behaviors in the household, how many people live there, what your daily routine is like, and then we're able to provide low cost or no cost recommendations with programs or services that we offer. And if you've never participated as a Tampa Electric customer in one of those free home energy audits, those are available to you one time per year or more if needed. We just want to help you understand what costs are contributing to your electric bill and what is it that you may be doing yourself as a habit in your home to contribute, or a recommendation for an equipment failure or something of that nature. But an energy audit is always a really good place to start. That energy audit for the online can be, done right from your phone at tampaelectric.com. In addition to scheduling a home energy audit is a great thing to do. It's a good time of year before we start to get really super hot outside. And we'd be happy to come out.
I'll piggyback off Heather real quick too. Just because in Sarasota County, we don't use TECO, but we actually use FPL, Florida Power and Light. So I'll kind of, to the best of my ability, be the FPL expert on the panel today. But FPL does offer a similar program as well. They will have their energy experts, is what they call them, come out and do an energy audit of your home completely for free. As well as my other tip would be just to start small and manageable with little things around your home. The main things we tell people to start with are just regular maintenance things. So checking your air filter, your AC maintenance, always starting with lighting is always a good idea, just because light bulbs are a little bit more inexpensive these days. And another tip that we always share is, especially if you're renting, we recommend looking at what maintenance's responsibilities are, because those can typically be very, very big cost savers. Typically, they're not going to come out of your pocket as well, because it's something that maintenance should be taking care of. So those are just kind of in a nutshell some ideas that I could share on that.
Thank you, Devin.
Great. That all sounds spot on. Piggybacking from all of that, here at the city of Tampa, we usually have big buildings, commercial buildings, industrial places, and it's a good practice to see what companies do to improve their energy efficiency and apply that to the residential sector, right? Usually companies have the resources to kind of manage their own efficiency, and it's good to mirror that and apply it to our residential areas. So, tips usually range in complexity, costs, and priorities. So simple, low cost changes that can be made to reduce some costs would be to seal the property, maybe some weather strips your doors, avoid that air to seep out, including the windows as well. Those are a very low cost, and you can just get them for cheap at your local store. Unplugging equipment, phantom power is real, and a lot of people have a lot of equipment just plugged in that's not being used. So not only unplugging them will avoid that phantom power, but also will protect them from any kind of surge if it happens. It'll be isolated from the grid. Thermostat adjustments, that I think we're going to talk about this later on, but these thermostat adjustments by season play a key role in how much power that HVAC system will draw, and maybe increasing 2 degrees or so, just still keeping it comfortable during the hot summer, and then lowering that heater a little bit more during the cold months will certainly reduce that energy consumption. And there's behaviors. I love the word that Heather used. Behaviors are a huge thing. It's very, very common that a lot of households just keep their shutters all day and avoid using sunlight, and just try to use their light from their residence all the time, and just opening those shutters and letting sunlight in will avoid using light from your house, and that will ultimately reduce your costs. Higher end of things that you can do, equipment replacements, trying to get those Energy Star rated equipment in, and replacing old aged equipment that draws a lot of energy. Like Devin mentioned, LEDs, replacing those lights with LEDs is a huge thing. I've worked with multiple industries, and I can tell you, there's significant costs with projects like that just to replace the light bulbs to LEDs. And at the far end of that would be complete replacement of windows with double pane windows and getting that air gap in between, and high energy efficiency HVAC system, stuff like that.
Well, these are sorry, Heather.
That's okay. I was just going to say, I'd like to just add just a little bit. Most, if not all, utility companies have, like I said, the free energy audit in the home. And if you're looking for some great efficiency improvements, again, at low cost or no cost, and I can talk about some of those no cost programs further in the webinar, but the shape that your ducts are in inside your attic space in reference to the insulation and how much you have also can play a role into your comfort level and behavior inside your home. And again, as we move forward through the webinar, I'll be glad to expand on additional details and or provide answers to the Q&A at the end of the webinar for all the folks listening to take that back.
And these are all fantastic tips. I love the them offering visits to your house to check things out, or be able to complete your own stuff online. I can't tell you how many conversations I've had with my partner, because I have a tendency to leave TVs on throughout the day, even if I'm not watching them. And it's always like, how much is that adding to our utility bill? So it's great that these services are available. So hopefully there can be less conversations about how much is something contributing, and more action about that.
Absolutely. And we provide information on what things cost specifically per hour, because a lot of folks will go back and forth with each other. Oh, the TV left on all day is contributing so much, when you might find out that, like, for instance, this ceiling fan in the back of me here is 1 penny per hour.
Wow.
Well, if you go into a home that has 4 fans that are running 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, times 30 days, I'm not a mental math person, but real quickly, say $24 a month just from your ceiling fan is contributing to that electric bill. What is the breakdown of the water heating cost for the family that lives in the home? Perhaps it's 1 person, perhaps it's 5 people. What does that contribute? My biggest goal when I was an energy auditor was to first help people understand what it takes to run their home, without the cost of heating and cooling, which we know heating and cooling, mainly cooling here for Florida, makes up 50% of our electric bill. So if your average bill to run your home is, say, $120, but you get a bill for $210, then we know how many hours the air conditioner is running, what temperature settings you have it on, and if you're increasing or decreasing your cost and runtime, what energy improvements need to be made within the space in order to decrease the cost of that bill, but still have comfort. So that's what my goal is always to get people to understand where they're spending their money and where it can be reduced.
And I think that's just so important because there's a lot of confusion. Like we live in a world that's so technological. There's so many different appliances that people are using these days. There's so many different types of smart home accessories. So I think helping people be more informed on what appliances in their house, what is driving their bills is an important step in building that into their budgets. Budgets are really only based on knowledge, and so if you don't know where your spending is coming from, that's going to hurt your ability to fix your budgets or maximize your savings during those summer months, especially because we have so many folks from up north that are always moving here, and for that their Florida summers can be a bit of a difference for them compared to the summers back north. I'm from Ohio, so I one of those people that was a little shocked when I first moved down here several years ago, but something to keep in mind. And something that we've been talking about, and all three of you have mentioned, are energy efficiencies. Different appliances have different impacts. You've mentioned light bulbs, appliances in your house. Can we briefly touch on, for folks who might have an older dishwasher, for instance, how that might be impacting their utility efficiency versus a newer one? I know that a lot of these appliances have stickers and stuff that say, hey, you can save this much money over time. Can you all educate or provide some information on what those mean and how modern appliances might be more energy efficient than older appliances that folks might have?
Yeah, well, I think it helps to define energy efficiency, right? So simply put, is the use of less energy to get the same level or higher of work or some kind of output, right? Or some kind of comfort in the case of residents. So using less energy indicates, overall less kilowatt use, which is what utility companies measure energy in. And, being informed, like Heather mentioned with an audit, it helps pin down exactly where your energy is being consumed, looking at what you have at the moment and seeing what improvements can be done with new technology that's been out there, and digging deep into what actually is consuming all that energy in your house. And like Heather mentioned again, a lot of that will come from HVAC equipment, and not a lot of people would have that amount of money to replace that equipment. But if we can do minor changes in what's accessible to us, we can reduce our bills significantly. And we've done that here in the city of Tampa many times.
Wonderful.
And I'll add too, something that I discuss whenever we're teaching our classes is that it's kind of just the basic principle of when you use less, you're paying for less. And also along with that, you're kind of getting more out of what you are using and what you are paying for. So like with the example of the dishwasher, if let's say it costs $100 to operate in a year, well, you might get 10 more loads out of that $100 out of that year, just because you switch to a more efficient dishwasher because the newer technology is heating the water better and faster, or it uses less water in general, just in a smarter way. So it's all about using the electricity and the water in a smarter way, so you're getting more out of what you are paying for, is how I like to think of it.
That's awesome.
Great.
And that's a great way to put it. And I think that that y'all have mentioned things like HVAC. Carl, you talked about retrofitting housing to better reflect efficiencies, and I think it's important, especially during tax season, that there are tax benefits and credits out there for folks who decide to do new roofing, new HVAC unit, new windows. So even though it is a significant investment in a lot of the cases to replace that with more energy efficient infrastructure in your house, you can write some of that off in your taxes to get some money back through credit. So it's not a complete lose-lose, being able to, spend your money on that. You should get money, not only addition to the tax credits, but also according to y'all, with the money you'll be saving through lowered utility bills. And on the topic of utility bills and making your houses more efficient, for folks who might be living paycheck to paycheck, they might say, hey, I can't afford to replace my HVAC or buy newer appliances. And they might also be maximizing their energy at home right now when they can, like you said, unplugging things, keeping the blinds closed during the day. For those folks who are already stretching it as is, or people who are just, interested in learning more about, what kind of resources are out there, are there any kind of specific programs or incentives in Florida or the Tampa Bay area or the Suncoast area that, support energy efficient practices for residents with lower incomes?
I can address that for you, Matthew. At Tampa Electric, as a Tampa Electric customer, we offer the Neighborhood Weatherization Program. It's been in existence for about 16 years. I've had it since its inception. We have serviced over 100,000 homes. And what our Neighborhood Weatherization Program concludes of is that free home energy audit by a Tampa Electric energy auditor. And then we provide you with different measures at no cost to help the home become more energy efficient. In addition to those measures, some of those do include water reduction, low flow shower heads, aerators. We provide caulking for windows. If replacement of windows is not an option, let's caulk them and get them sealed. Weather stripping threshold, if it's applicable to the door, we're going to make sure that that gets applied. And then what we're also going to do is we're going to look at, for instance, if you have a split system, such as what they call a condenser, which is the piece that is outside the home, and then an air handler, which is on the inside of the home. One of the techniques that I like to use with customers when I was in the field quite a bit is, the coils need to be cleaned on the air handler. Perhaps it's in a closet where you're able to access and see that those coils are dirty. And the bottom line is what goes in must come out. Well, it's kind of costly. And, a lot of times if you're leasing, it's difficult to get them in there to maintain that healthy coil. I've used YouTube videos before to show customers at very low cost, $12 to $14. Let's go to Lowe's and Home Depot. This is exactly what you would buy. You can use a soft old toothbrush, and it really allows one to change the air quality that you're breathing, but it also helps the system to breathe better, because if it suffocates and cannot breathe, it cannot perform at its maximum efficiency for you. So during the weatherization audit that we provide, all of those types of things are going to be identified and shared with you. And then if it's a single family home and it has an attic space, and we go in and we look at the ductwork. If we find that the ductwork has never been sealed with mastic, we're going to use that on the joints, seams, and connections and all the penetrations. So again, you're making a nice tight seal and cooling the home versus cooling the attic. And then of course, based on the R value, that's how insulation is rated. We're going to look at the R value and we're going to determine if additional, because the higher the R value you have in the attic, the more resistance to heat or cool penetration there is, and we provide an incentive for free insulation to be added as well. Weatherization delivery is, I do about 50-50, 50% single family homes for Tampa Electric and 50% multifamily homes. And all of that is a free service to our customers. Inside that measures kit, we also provide the customer with 6 LED 9-watt light bulbs, a coil brush cleaner, and then the other items that I mentioned. There's also a wall plate thermometer in there. For instance, a lot of people like to put it in their bedroom. It's usually the furthest location from the thermostat or the air handler, so that they can see what their bedroom temperature is. But those are some of the things that we provide at Tampa Electric.
Yeah, and I did review here at the city of Tampa. I contacted some various people to see if there's any government assistance programs out there that can help, the public and do energy improvements to their home. And turns out there is. I think it's called, I got it right here, is the Energy Efficient Home Improvement Credit. That can help you lower your tax burden. I believe it's $1,200, $1,200 for energy improvement costs. There are some limits on doors, I believe, windows, and some audits. But like Tampa Electric, they offer that free audit that you can let them come in and take some time and have them assess that for you. I believe there's also the Florida Weatherization Assistance Program. It's a grant in community action agencies and local governments and nonprofit agencies to fund energy saving repairs in all counties. So, on average, they hand out $2,600 for each home. So that's quite significant. And, companies like Tico, they have their own programs like I just mentioned, and just reaching out will save you a lot of money, just having them come in and give you that report and those incentives that they provide.
Correct. I'd just like to add to that real quick. You mentioned the federal weatherization programs. Yes, Tampa Electric works directly in all the counties that we serve with the Mid-Florida Community Action Agency. Mid-Florida Community Action Agency. So for instance, our weatherization program is like a stepping stone to get to these agencies that are able to do much higher contributing items to the home at no cost, as Carl mentioned. Such, for instance, some may require doors or windows to be replaced. An HVAC may need to be replaced, but it is all built in as a well-oiled machine to get everybody what they're able to get inside that home. It does take some patience, but once you have your foot on the right path, you're in a good direction to becoming more energy efficient and having your electric bill go down, but yet still be comfortable.
Yeah, and jumping in for the Sarasota Manatee counties, the weatherization assistance program down here is run through Step Up Suncoast. So if you're in Sarasota or Manatee County, it's similar federal program. Through Step Up Suncoast, I believe the average that they awarded last year was actually in the $7,600 range. So it kind of depends on where you're at, what you're asking for, median household income, all of that is dependent on the area. But I was going to mention just what Heather talked about with the TICO weatherization program that they have. It's super awesome.
Thank you.
Unfortunately, FPL here doesn't have it. So that's kind of where my position jumped in to kind of fill the gaps for FPL. So as an energy program specialist, we do pretty much all of the same things that Heather was mentioning. So we'll do weatherization, retrofits at home with foam tape, rope caulk. We provide the little energy and water saving kits, is what we like to call them, to any resident that attends one of our classes or is struggling with really high bills. The only requirement that we have, since it is through a county program, is that it has to be a Sarasota County specific resident. But I do know that, as Heather was saying, TICO is very generous. They're really, really great with their weatherization opportunities. We have volunteers called energy coaches within my program. One of them is actually a TICO customer. So we get to hear all about those cool evaluations because he does it, I think, every year. So
absolutely,
great. I could definitely sing high praise for that.
Thank you.
Awesome.
And one more opportunity, sorry, I forgot to mention, was the Office of Housing and Community Development in some areas. In Sarasota County, we offer a home rehab loan. So it's worth looking into for some OHCDs. They'll offer you a rehab loan. For Sarasota County, for example, it's up to $60,000, interest-free. Payments are deferred as long as the home is owner occupied. And it's similar repairs anywhere from efficiency-related items to even like flooring, doors, countertops. And they apply for low equity citizens as well.
Okay.
I didn't, sorry to jump in, but I just remember, and correct me if I'm wrong, Heather, but I believe, on the top end of replacements, like it is HVAC and air conditioners, some utility companies will provide some kind of rebate if you replace a very old equipment with an energy efficient equipment. I don't know if Tika does it. I believe they did. Yeah. So that's something to look into if you're in that range of and looking to replace some of that equipment in your house. It might be a good idea to contact utility companies, see what kind of rebates they can provide for you.
That's correct. Just in addition to that, I know I keep going back to the energy home audit, but the audit can also provide you not only the cost of what it's costing you to run your AC per hour, but the efficiency rating or the SEER rating, the seasonal energy efficiency rating that that unit is performing at. So say, for instance, if I was to come to your house today at 2 o'clock to determine what that SEER rating would be, that's going to look way different at 2 o'clock in August because the temperature outside has changed. So it's working really hard. And that's where, you know, some of the tips come into. So for instance, on a 95-degree day in August versus a 90, well, we don't have 95-degree days in May, but we're up to 85 already. That's why where you set your thermostat at is very important, because for I'm sorry, I keep talking a lot, but I just have a lot to add.
You're good.
For every 1 degree below 78 degrees, the cost for just the air conditioner increases 7% per 1 degree. For every 1 degree above 78 that you can set the thermostat, perhaps you're gone for 4 or more hours a day, you save 7% per 1 degree. And, you know, I'm sure a lot of folks are thinking, well, it's going to take me so much longer to get my house back down to a cooler temperature. I promise you the run time to cool back down is far less greater than it ran while you were gone, with you not feeling the benefits from it.
Right.
The other thing is ceiling fans. I know I mentioned those, they're a penny an hour. They only benefit you if you are underneath of them, creating a wind chill factor over your skin. So the second you leave the room, that penny an hour is just like throwing it out the window. Nobody benefits. So turn those fans off if you're in rooms that are unoccupied. That's all. Thank you.
Great.
These are amazing suggestions. I'm like mentally writing them all down just because I think it's important to take in consideration. That, you know, even though these individually might not seem like much, they add up together. And you know what we've been talking about, knowledge is power. So Heather, please keep preaching about, you know, these audit opportunities and, you know, opportunities with our local governments for their support as well. And so we talked a lot about, I think, utilities from a homeowner perspective or someone who owns a home. I kind of want to go into the lens of our renters, people who, you know, maybe they have a corporate landlord who, you know, and being able to replace your HVAC is not possible. Or, you know, you have a mom and pop landlord who, you know, they can't afford to, you know, replace your HVAC or, you know, your windows or doors or anything. For our renters who might be restricted with what changes they can make to their property and may not have the means to change it even if they could, what are some, and I know we've talked about a couple of these, what are some like simple, easy to do things that people can do today to their houses to start reducing their energy costs?
So I know I kind of started off with just a very, very basic tip of just make sure you're aware of what maintenance's responsibilities are in your complex, in your area, just so you're basically aware of things you don't need to be spending your own money on to fix. Another tip that we also share, if you are a frequent renter, so you might not be staying in the same rental for a long period of time, is installing all of these things that all of us have spoken about, like the LEDs, the weather stripping, but also keeping your old light bulbs too. So that way you can take those new ones with you and just replace the old ones when you're leaving. It might sound a little bit cheap, but it's just so that you can keep those benefits going with you. And that way you won't be charged for a missing light bulb. You'll still have the old one in there. You take it with you, continue those benefits. And then also we always suggest advocating for energy upgrades is what we like to call them. So even just suggesting, hey, if you think you need new HVAC systems, suggest they take one of our classes or suggest they get an energy audit from TICO or FPL. They offer business audits. I know FPL does. I'm sure TICO probably does as well. Well, they will do like larger scale audits of larger complexes so they can look at common areas or the facility as a whole. So there's tons of opportunities to make sure that your property managers or your landlords are kind of aware of what they can do as well.
Certainly. Yeah. You know, renters are in a unique space, right? So most of the practices that will benefit them is comes down to really behavior. So and some of the things we do instinctively and in a routine, right? We just wake up and just follow our routine. Some of us go to work, some of us just do some other activities, and we're just always all as days go on, we just follow this routine and we kind of forget of the things that we're just wasting money or we're just wasting energy. Like I mentioned earlier, having the shutters all day and using your own lighting, that's very common. I see that a lot. So using that sunlight and reduce your lighting energy consumption is big. But I've also seen a lot of people that would just let the hot shower run for some time. And, we don't want to touch that coldness right out of the bat. So we just let it run a little bit till it gets hotter. But letting it run more than it needs to will put more cold water in the water heater, which in turns will kick in that water heater to use more energy. So, that indirect energy consumption certainly does play a key role there. Turning off the lights when you leave a space, turning off the fans, like now we know it's a cent, an hour. Let's see, and that HVAC system, right? That's huge. Even with renters, we want to reduce that cost as much as we can, and that's something that we can manually do. And some of these have schedules, right? These are pretty smart nowadays, so you can set a schedule and avoid that manual touching of that thermostat as much as you can, and having that schedule will let you perfectly tune your HVAC needs to the comfort and to the time of day that you need.
I think these are great. So a question, and for our audience out there, just a reminder, we have about like 10 minutes left before we wrap up questions. If you have any questions in your mind from any of the amazing conversation we've been having so far, please use the Q&A feature so we can share it with our panel. But on a question that just came into my head, and Heather, this was inspired from something that you had mentioned about, AC temperature management. I grew up, looking online and people always saying that, keep your AC at the same temperature year round, because if you keep bouncing it up and down, it's going to make your AC work harder. And so I'm like, what other misconceptions do I have in my head? And so I want to see if anyone on the panel has suggestions on how to find good information. Things like, your AC, or, I've also, been told like it's more utility expensive to hand wash your dishes versus use a dishwasher. So is there a good sources of information out there for folks who are like, I don't really want to invest the time into an audit, I would rather just Google it myself? Do y'all have any top of mind resources, anything from our local governments or organizations that might provide some more information on these misconceptions?
Yes. So local governments usually have a sustainability or resiliency department. These departments are tasked to provide the public some tips and some practices that they can do to lower their energy costs as well as utility costs. Here at the city of Tampa, we do provide our general population with these kinds of tips. If they go into our website at tampa.gov, and there's a search bar, you can put efficiency or energy, and the first article that pops up will give you all that. The federal government with the Department of Energy also provides guidelines to reduce your energy consumption. And, they also tackle these misconceptions, like the one that you just mentioned. I believe there are others like, sacrificing comfort because you want to be more energy efficient. That's really not the case. A lot of these energy efficient programs and equipment can perform at the same or even better a level of work that the other counterpart, depending on how old your current equipment is, right? Mm-hmm. So, you really don't sacrifice comfort. And if replacing those equipments and taking care of the things and physical equipment at your house, and also on top of that, changing the behaviors, like we mentioned before, would quickly result in savings. And you can see that, 30 days later when the bill comes.
I agree. One of the misconceptions that most people have, that I have heard so many times over the years, is, oh, I shut all my doors inside my home. And of course, depending on the age of the home, um, air conditioning is made for whole house ventilation. Again, what comes out, the amount of air or CFM that comes out, we need for it to return back to the system, okay, so that it can recycle that air. Making sure you're changing your filter every month. Now, for instance, if it's months that we're not having a long amount of runtime by our air conditioner, you may not have to change it every month because you may have your system in the off position and enjoying the few days that we do have with the windows open. So I definitely agree with you, Carl. There are a lot of things that all it is behavior change, maintenance, changing that filter every month, making sure you get that from the property management company. And another misconception too is the type of filter that you use. You know, they're pretty expensive, right? And if you have pets in the home with tile or wood floors, no carpet, there's no place for the things that enter on our shoes or our pets to settle on the floor. So that gets pulled back in with air quality to the air conditioning system. And that's very important. Again, what goes in must come out. So if it's really dirty, that means you're breathing that and your system is suffering. So yeah, I think a lot of those misconceptions can be debunked. And when you know them and you practice them, you immediately start seeing a reduction.
And I would say a good rule of thumb for just Googling a resource, as you had kind of said, would be if you're looking for something related to like an appliance or an electronic or something like that, Energy Star has a great website where they talk about if you're in the market for a new product, if you're using your product correctly at the most efficiently that it can run. And then I would say the Department of Energy probably has better tips for like conservation. So like what you can do for free at your home, the no cost strategies, as we like to say. So those are pretty well vetted, very informative websites that I think could definitely bust some myths if you're curious.
That's awesome. Thank you three for answering that question. I know that there's, these days there's so much information out there. It's hard to find out what's reliable or not. So I think it's really important to figure out what is actually making an impact and what kind of things we don't have to worry about. And Heather, I'm gonna pick your brain for a quick second because something you said really piqued my interest on air filters. I'm gonna be honest, I'm not an utility or energy expert. That's why you three are here today. And it seems like there's just so many different types of filters out there. And it seems like they go from like dust and animal dander, which is important for me because I have a dog. And then there's also things like it stops viruses and stuff. Like, is there a certain point where it's like it's nice to have, but you don't need it necessarily for energy efficiencies, or what kind of things that people should keep an eye out for when they're buying filters? And Carl and Devin, you're more than welcome to join in as well.
Absolutely. I'm not able to recommend the MERV rating. Filters have what they call a MERV rating, and Carl or Devin may know a little bit more on the MERV rating than myself. And of course, it's all going to depend on what your budget is, or maybe you don't have a budget. Maybe it's just supplied to you by your property management company if you lease that space. But if you do have a budget, then you would want to be able to purchase the MERV that is affordable. My 2 cents on that is change it. That's the key. Change it and know when to change it. Make sure that you're looking at that. It's going to run a lot more May, June, July, August, even September into October in our climate than it actually is probably in March or April. So those months that you don't have to change, March or April, maybe you can purchase a little bit higher MERV rating type of filter for those summer months. That would be my education piece on it for customers. And some just work better than others.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. The MERV rating will give you kind of like the guideline on what to look for, how much you're filtering out that air and, the frequency in which you need to replace them. And then there's all kinds of filters. There's fiberglass filters, carbon filters, and, most of these will give you different frequency to replace them. For instance, carbon, they filter out a lot more, but they probably will need to be replaced sooner. I would say, I think a common practice is between 1 or 2 months instead of a fiberglass filter, which you can replace maybe between 3 and 6 months, depending on your space. So that also aligns with how efficiency, right? The energy efficiency part of it. Um, so it's a balance, right? It's what come with comforts. So having a higher MERV rating and a better filter will give you a better environment inside your house. Maybe you have pets and you need that, so your comfort level will rise, right? As your frequency and filter replacement will change. But then if you're like a lot of people nowadays that, there's not a lot of people living with you and you're barely at home, you're maybe working or doing some other activities outside, maybe a fiberglass filter is the right one for you, and you just don't need to replace it as much.
Yeah. I used to tell folks all the time, use your electric bill as a reminder if you're on a 1 month cycle for replacing your filter, and especially during those longer run months. And of course, the dirtier it is, the the more you need to change it. Even if it is a 1 to 3 month filter, but you have a lot of people coming in and out, or maybe you don't have a lot of traffic, you just have a lot of runtime on your system. And maybe you are living in a new construction area or an area that does a lot of things on the road that causes all of that to come inside your space, creating that indoor air quality to be a little less than what it could be as if the filter was clean and cycling the air the way that it needs to.
This has been so helpful, and I think that the takeaway suggestion with this is, if you're listening this, as soon as this is over, go check your air filter, see when they need to be replaced, and go out and buy a new air filter if you need to. That's so important, not just for our utilities, but also just for clean breathing around the house. Since especially if you work from home, you're gonna be spending so much time. You want to make sure it's clean, good air to breathe. We do have a couple minutes left, and so a really important question. And Carl, you've talked about this a couple times. Is comfort at home? This is something for folks who we sleep at home. For some people work from home. Spend a lot of time at a place. And it might be hard, Heather, you talked about, setting up a temperature in the high 70s, for instance, might be uncomfortable for folks. People might say, hey, I want to have my like for me, it's comfort for me to hear a background noise or something, or having, fans spinning around the house. So I think I want to spend a couple minutes talking about comfort levels in a house and how people can balance that out. So, do y'all have any suggestions on how people can balance their goal of energy efficiency, maximizing their savings while also, maintaining comfort and practicality in their homes?
Yeah, and I can give you a perfect example. I just completed an audit for one of our buildings here at the city of Tampa, and when I went into that building to do the audit, I noticed a lot of people with 2 jackets on, with gloves on, and that to me was a clear indication that the HVAC system was just too cold for this environment. So we started looking into that. We increased the degrees, and a lot of people stopped using personal heaters, which is the other thing, a huge driver of power, drawing power. So as we did that, we noticed a lot of people stopped using the jackets, stopped using their gloves, and kind of came in a different kind of outfit, right? A more comfortable outfit. So, what you wear, and if you're working from home, it's very important. Maybe you're using jackets during the day. Maybe, lighter clothing will help, and increasing that temperature will also give you that same comfort level. And let's just say if your ultimate goal is just to save energy no matter what, and you've done all this and you're like, well, I replaced my equipment, I absolutely did everything, I'm being as lean as I can in energy efficiency, you can maybe then look into a longer return on investment in a new equipment like a solar installation for people that own their homes. It's a great way to look into this. And there are some incentives that the government is using, like the solar tax credit. You get 30% back on your tax burden, and you can use that all the way up to 2032. So that means that it rolls over. If you don't use all that tax credit this tax year, you can roll it over and use it for next year. So, it all comes down to behaviors and at that point, and using lighter clothing will certainly help when you increase that temperature. Not letting your shower run as much, and maybe if you're washing your car at home and you let your water run, that also will play a key role in your utility costs. That's what comes to mind.
Thank you, Carl.
I think I'd just like to comment on something real quick in reference to solar. Solar is
Yeah.
kind of scary for a lot of people. You're interested, but you don't know where to start. And it does start with education on one, are you a good candidate for solar? And two, where can I educate myself so that I can understand on if that was something that I was a good candidate for, how do I move forward? And where is that reliable information for solar education? At least for Tampa Electric customers on the residential side, I recently just launched a new solar education platform with a company that once you get educated, you can leave Tampa Electric's website and go to their third-party platform and proceed. But I really like it because it starts out with Solar 101. It even has a calculator in there where it will take your specific home and look at your rooftop. And that allows for the calculations to be made to let you know if you're a good candidate. And then finally, in the end, if you say, you know what, I know all I need to know now, I feel very comfortable moving forward, that third-party platform, it allows for different vetted contractors, solar contractors, at no cost to you to provide quotes on different types of panels, cost, payback, all of that at your home. Once you leave and go to that site and get those bids from those contractors, you're immediately assigned for free an energy liaison between the contractors and yourself. And then, of course, understanding all of that in reference to net metering, getting those panels on your home, maintenance of them, the payback, all of that information is there. We designed that site because so many people have so many questions and don't know a reliable place to get those answers. And with Tampa Electric, or anyone can go to Tampa Electric's website and get that education. You don't just have to be a Tampa Electric customer. But it's there for you, and it starts out with Solar 101, and it's an easy read. It's, for me, I don't know a lot about solar. I really don't. And I can read it and understand it. And that is huge because then I can relay the information. So I just wanted to let everybody know that's out there.
Thank you, Heather.
Yeah, and just to add some points on that too, I would say just a really quick thing is that everybody kind of thinks with energy efficiency, it means you're using things less. It's not necessarily just using less air conditioning or less electricity or using your TV less. It's also just using it smarter and getting the most out of how much you do use it, like we've said multiple times. So it's just making sure that you are getting the most out of it, not necessarily just using it less, but using it smarter. And I also wanted to add that, which in turn kind of makes it more comfortable. But I was going to add too, there's also an aspect of peace of mind with safety and protection with your home that we were talking about with weatherization. So weatherization, just kind of in a nutshell, is basically just sealing your home tighter. So making sure your door frames are tight, windows, electrical, plumbing penetrations, all that. When we think about hurricane season or even just the stormy season in the summer, sometimes we hear residents have water blowing in through their doorways or coming in through their windows even when they're closed. So that's when we say that energy efficiency that comes from basically sealing your home up also adds that extra benefit of an extra layer of protection from the outside elements, whether that's bugs or water or air. And so in turn, that's also kind of a better peace of mind.
Wonderful. Thank you, Three, for sharing all that. We do have had some last minute comments from our audience that I want to share with you. We had someone who said thank you for sharing all this great information, your ideas today. We had someone else who mentioned that with the cooler weather they've been having lately, they've been leaving their AC off and windows open, but they wanted to remind folks about humidity that can create optimal mold conditions. So something to keep in mind is that there's trade-offs for everything. So you just got to keep that in mind. They also mentioned that they change their filters with their electric bills, their monthly bills, and they order their filters by the dozen, so they're able to do this more efficiently. So they said, thank you, Heather, for that suggestion. And we're moving into the final portion of our webinar today. First off, thank you for our audience for joining us. We do have a couple minutes left, so don't head off yet. However, when you do, please complete that survey like I mentioned earlier, just so we can make sure we're providing the best Money Matters experience possible. Another suggestion that I had in mind, Heather, especially we talk about budgeting, and I can only say this through the lens of a TECO customer, because that's what my partner and I have, that if you are a TECO customer, I don't know about the other utility companies out there, if you have had their service for more than a year, you can actually average out your monthly electric bills. And that's been so important for us budgeting, because we don't spend a lot during the winter, but during the summer, it becomes really expensive. And it's easier for us to budget when we know what those monthly amounts are going to be. So that's something to keep in mind if you are a TECO customer. If the other utilities out there, FPL might offer this, I'm not sure.
FPL does.
Perfect. There you go. If you're unsure, check with your utility company to see if that's something an option. That is so helpful with budgeting, because you'll know ahead of time what your expenses should be, to make it easier for you to budget everything else that you have. Since we only have a couple minutes left, I do want to give our panel one last opportunity to share any final thoughts or ideas you have, or if I'm listening to this, what's something that I should take away as perhaps a next step or something to keep in mind.
As final thoughts, I would just reach out to everyone and say, just take one day and look at your routine and see how it looks like. Like, be extra careful into looking at everything that you do and see if you're just following a routine and just wasting energy here or there, or maybe you're just using too much of this or too much of there, without really needing it. And when you pin down exactly that routine and what you actually do need to use during your day, you can then look at what to improve and the areas of improvement, and reach out to utility companies like TECO and have them come over, do an audit for you, and confirm your findings. Most of us, in some capacity, low or high, we do some practices that we just can improve on most of the time. So looking at that, looking at your shower patterns, and how you handle your windows and your shutters, how much of your lighting are you using throughout the day if you don't need to, and then look at your overall use of your space and see how you can improve it by being extra careful and looking at everything, at least just for one day, and you'll be surprised at what you can find.
I like all of that, Carl. Thank you. This
Yeah.
has been fun today. So all of you that have joined, I hope that you do have some takeaways from it. And just what Carl was mentioning, I'm just going to expand on, the job of the air conditioner, which contributes more than 50% of your electric bill as we move forward into these summer months, is to remove humidity. That is what makes us feel cool. And when it's not doing its job to remove the humidity, that's when you get longer run time. And folks tend to go to the thermostat and lower that temperature, which gives you longer run time. But if that's not the case, and you're, cooling okay, and it's maintaining its 17-degree difference from whatever the temperature is outside, use your ceiling fan or floor fan. It does create a wind chill factor of 3 degrees over your skin. So it may help you maintain that thermostat setting at the 78 recommended temperature versus, turning it down to say 75 and increasing that temperature, that 7% per 1 degree. So the takeaway from that is the further you are away from the outside temperature on the thermostat, the more you are contributing to the electric bill and creating longer runtime. Air conditioning in general, no matter if it's a brand new air conditioner or one that is 12 years old, can only provide a 17-degree difference, 18 maybe, from what the temperature is outside in order to create cooling. If you've ever noticed at 2 o'clock in the morning, if you wake up, oh, it's nice and cool in the house, but at 2 o'clock in the afternoon, not so much. It won't get down any lower. Well, that's because your temperature has changed outside and now you can get those lower temperatures. So sometimes, just like what Carl said, evaluating what you're doing and making some changes that cost you nothing but your time will significantly start to help reduce your cost, but keep your comfort the same. Thank you.
Yeah, to just add one final takeaway for the panel, I'll just say to always just start small and manageable, as we have said multiple times before. So like Matthew had said, even if that's just turning your TV off, making sure you do it consistently every day too, because the biggest issue that we see is people will adopt these. So you might take this class and be really excited about changing your air filter, but it only really counts if you're doing it every month consistently and you're remembering to do it. So always just starting small, bite-sized, something you can do with little ones if you have younger ones in the house is what we always recommend. Making it a game even. So we've told families before, try to have a curtain race to see who can close the curtains first at night. Just making it fun, small, and being consistent with your changes is what I would say. And definitely thank you all, everybody, for coming and taking part in this today.
Wonderful. Well, Carl, Heather, Devin, thank you for joining us. I know I learned a lot today. So I'm hoping the folks who joined us today and who watch our recording on YouTube will also have taken some really important stuff away. For those who had a good time and they want to continue their Money Matters journey, they can join us for our upcoming Money Matters on May 3rd, Monday at 12 p.m. We're going to be talking about disaster preparedness, which is so important for hurricane season coming up. So ways to safeguard your house, your family, and prepare for the season. We hope that having this utility savings conversation this early is going to help set you up for a successful budgeting over the hot summer months. And once again, thank you, Heather, Devin, and Carl for joining us. Thank you, our audience, for joining us. And I hope you all have a great rest of your day.